Hey guys, my name's Dot. I'm from Overland Antidote and at DatBlueElement on Instagram. And today we're in the shop because I'm going to show you how I install the Deezy TailGateStorage for your Honda Element. Let's get started. All right guys, so first let's go over the pieces that you'll get in the package for the tailgate storage. So these larger pieces here, you'll have a steel plate, which is the top plate. This one is the aluminum bottom plate. And then of course you'll also get the aluminum frame that will give structure to the tailgate storage and to the tailgate once you're done installing it. You also get a hardware packet with all the hardware that you need to install. So we're going to take a closer look at that. All right guys, let's go over the hardware that you'll get to install your tailgate storage, starting from left to right. You've got the hinges here that, obviously connect the frame here to the top plates. You have the latches that will lock your tailgate storage down and hold the cover down. You've got some shorter countersunk screws. This here is used to put the two plates that we mentioned earlier together, the aluminum plate and the steel plate. Some longer countersunk screws. These are actually used to attach the tailgate storage to your actual tailgate. And then you'll have some button head screws. These are used for a few different things, including attaching the hinges to the side plates and then the side plates to the actual tailgate storage frame. And then of course all the serrated nuts for all these screws. They're all the same size and thread pitch, so you'll just have a whole bulk of nuts here and only one size. And then finally, to go along with the frame of the tailgate storage itself, you'll get a left and right side piece, and this is where the hinges connect to and what you'll use these button head screws for to connect those hinges. All right guys, so before we get started on the install, let me just address one thing, which is Deezy's been selling these tailgate storages for about 5 or 6 years, which means it's gone through a few different improvements and iterations, and some of those include different installation methods. So previously, there was a method that was used and tried that used riv nuts, and you may have seen these videos on YouTube or maybe seen the printed materials. And the riv nut method actually is Deezy's it's not his preferred method of install. And the reason for that is riv nuts need a flat surface so that they can mate securely to that surface. And the metal that's underneath the tailgate storage plastic here, there's ridges that don't allow the riv nuts to be secure. And so effectively when you're drilling the holes, what people would run into is that it wouldn't give them the wiggle room to drill the holes, because if you were off by a little bit and that hole was on one of those ridges or next to one of those ridges, you couldn't secure the riv nut. And so the screw wouldn't line up when you are trying to secure the tailgate storage down, which means you would have to drill out the hole that's in the tailgate storage, and then you no longer have a clean install. So the tried and true method and the base method that Deezy has always used was just drilling the hole, putting a screw with a nut on the back to secure the tailgate storage. So that's the way that we're going to do it here. And because of some of the different methods that are out there that may have been used and you may have seen, that's why we're making this video here to show you how we install the tailgate storage here at Overland Antidote. So let's get started. All right guys, here we are at the tailgate of the Honda Element, and here's the tools that you're going to need for this install. So you're going to need a tape measure, something to mark where you're going to cut, of course something to cut. Now this is just a angle grinder with a cut blade. You could also use a jigsaw as well, but some sort of cutting tool to cut not just the plastic but also the metal. To drill the holes, of course you need a drill, and this here is a 3/16 drill bit. I like to use one of these punches in order to mark where I'm going to drill. So if you have one of those help. And then you have This is a 3/32 Allen wrench or an Allen bit that you can use on a ratchet. And then you have a 11/32 socket, and of course the ratchet itself. I'm using a 1/4" ratchet with the socket. You can use a trim tool as well. This will help you get the plastic off. I usually find that I don't need it, but it can help just in case. And then also some tape will help later, or if you have one of these magnetic fingertip tools, this actually works really well too for part of the install. And then lastly, I have here just a straight edge for when I mark where I'm going to cut. I can use the straight edge to draw some lines with the pen. Mark where we're going to cut this plastic. After that, we'll remove the plastic, cut the hole itself, and then we can put it back so that we can see where we'll cut the metal underneath. But first, let's measure. So from the edge of the tailgate, we're actually going to measure 3 3/4 inches up from the edge. Then from the top side, this line that you have here that goes all the way around the tailgate, we're going to use that as a reference, and we're going to measure down from the top a 1/2 inch. And then using this same line that comes around, but on the edge over here, we're going to measure a 1/4 inch. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and make a few more marks so that I can use my straight edge to then make a nice clean line to where I can cut. All right, guys, I just wanted to give you another visual reference to help you when you're making these cut lines. So you can see we're at the top side of the tailgate here, closest to the body of the car. And as mentioned before, you measure a 1/2 inch down from this indent, you know, this line here that's already in the plastic. So you can see when you do that, a 1/2 inch down, the line will connect basically right at the top of these plastic ridges that are in the trim. So that's an easy reference to use, that when you make your marks, it should come right across the top. And you're going to cut the majority of these ridges out with the line that you measure from this edge as well, up 3 3/4 inches, and you'll cut out this rectangle like right in the middle. So the majority of this ridge will get cut out. So like I said, that's just an easy way and an easy reference for making this top line. All right, guys, well, now that we've made a line all around the tailgate storage here, we're going to remove this plastic piece so that we can cut it. The way that we do that is we're going to remove this knob that you use to open up the tailgate, and then there's also a screw right underneath there. Then once that's off, we can actually just come and pop up the plastic piece by either using your trim tool or just pulling up on the edge. It's just held on by plastic clips, so you just need to pop those up. And then just be aware that when you do bring up the plastic, that the plastic will tend to hang up on this cable here. So just make sure to loosen it up by bringing the tailgate up slightly, and then you can bring that cable around the plastic piece to get it off. So let's do that now. So now that we have the line on the plastic, we're going to go ahead and cut out the plastic to where the tailgate storage is going to install. So to do that, you can use, as I mentioned before, a cutoff angle grinder with a cutoff wheel like this. You can use a jigsaw. I'm going to use this smaller pneumatic cutoff wheel just because it's a little bit easier to control, but this one works just fine as well. And also, when you're doing this, don't forget some safety equipment. You can see I've got some gloves on here. Always have your safety goggles, and also for comfort and to protect my ears, I'm going to use some of these ear muffs. So here we go. All right, guys. Now you can see the center portion of the plastic has been cut out. We'll just throw that aside because it won't be used anymore. And then what we can do actually is we can take the frame and just do a quick test fit. And then once we make sure that it fits in there, we can clean up these edges and some of the plastic bits that were left from the cutting tool. So let's do that. And as you can see, it fits in there. It will fit a little bit loose, and that's because we made the hole just slightly larger than it needs to be, but that's exactly how we want it. So let's move on to the next step. As you can see, I have the plastic reinstalled onto the tailgate. And before I did that, as I mentioned, I did clean up the burrs left by the cutting tool. And also, if there were any of these white plastic clips that were left in the tailgate, then of course you want to take those out first and put them back into the clips, the clip holders that were on the plastic trim piece, and then reinstall it. And then firmly press all the clips in. Now that that's in and laying flat, I'm just going to take my marker and I'm going to mark out this rectangle in the center here on the metal, because this is where we're going to be cutting. So I'm just going to go all the way around and just mark my cut lines. And let's move on to the next step. All right, in the next step, we're actually going to be cutting the metal itself. But before we do that, we want to take a couple precautions. So what I like to do is, as you can see, these wires here run right across where we're going to be cutting. So I like to mark them off so that they're a little more visible and I can pay attention to them and see them easier when I'm making cuts. That way I don't accidentally cut into the wires. So what I do is I just put a little piece of tape and then I pop them off of their clips, and then I unplug them and I try and tuck them away as much as I can on both sides. The second thing that we want to pay attention to is this rod here that is attached to the latch that opens the tailgate. As you can see, it runs right up across and close to where we're going to be cutting. So what we want to do is this plastic clip here is just undo this bar. You can do it by hand or you can use a pick or a screwdriver. And then you pop the bar up like this. And again, what we'll do is we'll just drop it down so that it's out of the way and not close to where our cut line is. Once we do that, just go around the rest of the tailgate, mark off with tape the wire to where you feel comfortable, and then pop them out of the clips, and then we'll prepare to go ahead and start cutting the metal. All right guys, so here we are ready to make our cuts into the metal. And as you can see, I put up a barrier to the interior of the car, so that way we can keep it cleaner and make our cleanup afterwards a little easier by making sure none of the metal sparks and shards go into the car. So I just used some tape just to place that up there, and that should really help with the cleanup afterwards. So as mentioned, we want to be very conscious of where the wires are. So what I did is I actually made a cut already into this left corner, and before I did that, I just took another piece of tape, and knowing where my wires are, because I marked them, I just moved them over as much as possible and I taped them down and away from my cut area. Now that I'm going to transition over to this side, I'll just undo the tape and move the wires away from where I'm going to be cutting, so that way it keeps them as safe as possible. Another thing to keep in mind is when you're using an angle grinder with a cut wheel like this or a jigsaw, this metal is not that thick, and so it should cut pretty easily. And so just keep in mind that you don't want to be putting too much pressure, because this should cut right through it. If you put too much pressure, you run the risk of possibly hitting the material underneath this other layer, or again, maybe you'll slip and hit one of the wires. So make sure that you're putting just enough pressure to get through the metal, which again, with one of these cut wheels should be really easy. Last thing, of course, safety. You can see I already have gloves on. I have my goggles here. I'm going to protect my ears. So I'm going to go ahead and get going on the rest of the metal and get that cut out. So again, we'll just undo this tape. I'm going to pull the wire over as much as I can and just tape it down, because I'm going to be cutting along this top edge here, and then as I go along and I come around to this bottom edge, I'll just move it again. Now I'm just checking the edge here to see if my cuts made it all the way through. And it looks like I did. So now, in order to get this piece out, there is usually on the bottom side of the center here some adhesive that actually keeps this piece held to the bottom piece. So when you start pulling up on this, you might actually have to pull up with a little bit of force in order to break that adhesive free. So I'm also just being careful not to pinch the wires anywhere as I pull up. And then now we can pull this loose. And there it is. So you can see the piece is already cut out, but one note that I want to pass on to you is that depending on the year of the element, these wires that you have here will come up in a different area. On this car, you can see they came up through this hole here, but on different years, they'll come up through a hole that's more towards the center of this piece. So you can kind of see I just drew something as an illustration, but they'll come up through this hole instead. So in order to free up the wires, after you cut around the edge, you'll also have to cut from this edge or this one to the hole, and then you can kind of bend the metal so that you can slip the wires through. So again, that is year dependent. It'll be very obvious when you take the plastic trim off and take a look at it that the wires are coming up through a center hole. And then again, all you need to do is just cut a slit down from the edge to the hole, and then that way you can kind of bend the metal a little bit, and then you'll be able to slip these wires out through it, and then you'll be able to remove this entire piece. All right, now that we have that center piece out, the next thing we're going to do is a little bit of cleanup. Before I vacuum out the center here to get rid of all the metal shavings and clean up this adhesive here, I'm actually going to take a sand disc here and just kind of clean up these edges a little bit. You don't have to do this because the tailgate storage obviously is going to cover all of that, but just while I'm working in here, just for my own safety, I want to take off any sharp edges. So I'm just going to take a quick second and sand that down. Once I do that, I'm going to come in here and I'll use like a razor blade to cut this adhesive and remove it. A lot of it you can actually just grab by hand and start peeling it off, but you can use a razor blade to get off as much as you possibly can. And then I'll come in with a shop vac and I'll clean up and vacuum up any of the metal shavings from the cutting that we did. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now, and then I'll see you back here. All right, guys, so here we are at the tailgate again, and I have done all the cleanup as I just mentioned. I came in here and I took care of this adhesive with a razor, and I got off as much as I could so that it's flat as much as possible. You can obviously spend more or less time on that depending on how clean you want that, but I'm happy with this, with it just being flat. Then I reconnected the wires and then just laid them out how approximately they came when the metal pieces were still in there. So now it's time for a test fit, and we're going to go ahead and take the frame and go ahead and set it in here. Okay, so what we're looking for is along the edges that it lays flush and down, and this looks really good. And what you'll notice in the frame is that up at the top here, there is actually a notch that is cut so that the wires will lay. And then also on the side pieces, like this, there are also is these little notches cut. So when they go in, like this, you can see that you can move the wires over the same way to where they will fall into those notches so that they're not being pinched. And with that said, there are a couple choices when you make it to this point that we'll talk about right now when it comes to how you want to proceed with the install. All right, guys, so as you see, I left the frame of the tailgate storage in, and when you make it to this point, you have a couple of options depending on how much time you want to spend and depending on how clean of a look you want, you know, in the end. So the first option you have when it comes to these wires, so as you can see, they just run right through the middle of the tailgate storage area. And so the option that you have at this point is, if you don't want these to be visible, what you can actually do is undo the tape and undo all the protectant, and you can get some spare wire that you might have, and then just go ahead and extend these wires out. And so you want to extend them enough to where before you put this frame piece in, you can tuck these wires with the extensions behind the frame so that when you put it in, everything will be hidden. So that's a really good option if you want to take the time to get some new wire in there and put in some extensions. The other way that you can do it, obviously, is just to leave it like so, and then you can just secure it with some tape or, you know, some other method that you have. Or moving on to the second option you have, which is laying down some sort of insulation or padding or a constrained layer dampener or CLD tile, which a name brand that a lot of people know is Dynamat. One of those types of materials you can lay down, and I've seen a lot of people actually just lay that right on top of the wires, and then usually they'll just cut out a notch or a space where the connectors are, just so that they can keep track of where they're connected. But you could lay that down on the bottom as well. Another option would be some sort of insulation like this. This is a self-adhesive backing. It's about 1/4 inch thick. It's just like a foam with a foil on top. And this is not cut to size, but just to give you the idea, you could cut this to size and you can lay this down the same as well. So either a foam material or, like I said, a Dynamat CLD type of material you could lay down. And of course, you could always do both, right? So you can extend the wires, tuck them behind the frame, mount the frame, and then also put some sort of foam material or a CLD material on the bottom rather than having just the bare metal. Now, I have one of the first tailgate storages actually, and I've had it for probably 4 or 5 years, and I actually didn't do either of those things, and I've been totally fine. And the reason why I did that is because the things that I store back here are just things like my safety stuff. So my tire repair kit, I have my road flares, and some other things along along that nature. And so it doesn't matter to me if there's like these wires and stuff, because they just lay right on top in their own little packaging without any issue. So like I said, you have some choices. You could leave it as it is, just have these wires going across. You can extend the wires and tuck it behind so you have a clean look. And then also you can put some sort of material down as well on the bottom to give some padding. It can give a little bit of noise dampening, and also to give it a nice clean look. So those are the choices you have when you make it to this point. And like I said, it just depends on what the end result that you're going for is, and how much time that you wanted to spend. So again, for me, I just left it as is, and it's been great for years. And yeah, choice is yours. Okay, so we have one more thing that we want to check before we actually go and secure the tailgate frame storage to the actual tailgate by drilling the holes and bolting everything down. And that is, when you cut the hole into the tailgate, there are two possible places where it might rub a little bit on the frame. And I'm talking about this bar here that goes to the latch. So I reattached it here, and one place you want to check is that the bar actually goes straight here, and then it actually makes a slight bend. So there's almost kind of like a slight elbow right here. And then also right here where the actual bar attaches and where the latch is, it protrudes just slightly. So we want to see if we can make any sort of adjustments now so that it doesn't rub. Now, a little bit of rub actually is okay as long as it's not fully impeding the motion of the latch. But let's check and let's see if we can make any sort of adjustment here. So I'm going to take the frame, I'm going to set it in here. And what I like to do is I take the frame and I push it up towards the body as far as possible to give as much clearance as I can. And then the other thing is you actually want to push down on this back edge here, especially close to where the latch actually is, because once you bolt these down, that's actually going to be more representative, you know, of when you bolt it down. So you want to hold it down like this and then just work the latch back and forth and see if it's rubbing anywhere. Now, it's probably hard to hear on the camera, but it's not touching here where the latch is, which is great. So we cut our, we cut our hole perfect, but I can hear it just very slightly rubbing over here. And so an easy solution is just take this out. You can unlatch the bar. And then again, there's a little bit of a elbow right here. And what you can do is just grab it, and it's easy to just very slightly flex it and bend it. And then just put it back. And then we'll test it again. So we put that in, push it up towards the body as much as possible. We're gonna pinch this down so that it better reflects how we'll actually secure it once it's down, so that we know if it's rubbing. And then we're just going to work the latch again. So gonna reach down, just move it a little bit. Yep, and when I hold this tight, the latch does not hit on this backside, and I don't hear the bar hitting anymore either. So that's perfect. So we want to make note of that, meaning when we actually start drilling these holes, we want to make sure that we are also securing the tailgate storage frame and pushing it up just like we just tested it, so that it is in that same position that we tested when we actually drill the hole, mark and drill the holes and secure it down. So let's move on to marking these holes. All right, so now that the frame is in, we can use a couple of tools. Either just go ahead and grab a marker like this again, or again, I like to use a punch. This is to mark the holes where we're gonna drill. And just like I mentioned in the last little clip, because we tested the latch and it's not rubbing, or at least rubbing very minimally, and the latch moves overall freely, we want to make sure that we keep it in that position when we mark the holes. So remember that what we did was we pushed the frame up towards the body in that direction as much as we could, and then we also held down this front edge here so that it represents where it's going to lie once everything is secure. So for me, I'm just going to take this punch, I'm going to go to the center of the holes, and then I'm just going to mark in the plastic where I'm going to be drilling, and I'm just going to make my way around the tailgate storage and just mark my holes. And again, you can do that with one of these, or just take a marker like this and go around the edge and mark all the holes to drill. And if you notice, we're doing it in the plastic, so when it comes to drilling, we're going to end up actually drilling through both layers at the same time. All right, guys, just to show you a little bit of a close-up, you can see that hole that I marked. And if you look close, the metal underneath is generally horizontal like this. And so you can actually drill through the plastic and then straight through the metal all in one go. There's just two holes that you'll want to pay attention to because they don't have a flat metal underneath like that. So that's the center top one up here, right here. And then the one, it's the second from the left on the bottom row here. So for both of these, I treat them a little bit different. And what I do is once, you know, the hole is marked, I will actually drill the top hole through the plastic, and then I'll stop at the metal. And then for this top one here, what I'll do is I will take a tool like this, and I'll just slightly bend the metal up so that it gets it a little bit more horizontal. It just makes it so it's a little bit easier to drill. And then what I'll do is I will take the punch and kind of angle it in, and then I will make another mark on the metal. And then that'll make it so that the drill bit doesn't wander so much. On this one over here behind me, what I'll do is I will drill the hole. And then what I'll do is after I drill the hole, same thing, I will just mark it and punch it again, or I will just angle the drill bit how I need to actually get the hole drilled through. Now, if any of your holes, you know, end up being not just a nice pinpoint hole like this, but for instance, they kind of get elongated like this because maybe the drill bit moved, it won't matter because this will all be under the frame and you will not see that. So I'll show you that here. But you can see, even if that hole was not perfect, it's all hidden anyway. But again, it's this middle hole up here, and then the second from the left on the bottom. The metal underneath may be at a little bit of a slope, so you'll have to treat it a little bit differently to get the hole drilled through the metal so that the drill bit does not wander. So I'm just going to go around and go ahead and drill all these holes out. All right, so as I mentioned, this top hole here, I took a tool, I flexed the metal up a little bit just to make it a little more flat. It's still definitely slanted, but just a little more flat to make the drilling a little bit easier. And then after I drilled just the hole through the plastic, I came through and I punched the metal just so I had a spot for the drill tip to go into, and then I drilled the hole. So that one's already done. And then we're gonna just go around and drill all these other ones here where I marked. I'm just gonna support the metal underneath and just drill through. Same thing on this one that I mentioned where it might be on a little bit of a slope. So I drilled through the plastic, I came through and I just used my punch to mark it just to make it a little easier so that the drill bit has somewhere to catch. And then I'm just gonna come through and drill. So on that one, even though I punched it, I did have to start it at a little bit of an angle until it got through. And then I just corrected the angle slowly and then just kind of cleaned the hole up a little bit. So we're just going to go around and drill out all of these holes. Again, I like to support the metal underneath just slightly, go through the plastic, and then all the way through the metal. And there we go. All right, so just like before, after cutting, we had some debris inside the tailgate. So After the drilling, make sure to come through with a shop vac and clean everything up. All right, now that we have that cleaned up, we'll move on to getting this secured. Now that we have the screws drilled out for the frame of the tailgate storage, we're going to go ahead and secure it down. And to do that, we're going to use the serrated nuts, the longer of the countersunk screws, and a 3/32 Allen wrench. The reason why these nuts are serrated is once you start tightening them down, they'll actually catch on the metal on the back side, so you can actually just tighten them up with the Allen wrench from the top side without having to get a wrench on the back side, which helps in some of these areas that are harder to get to. So let's get started. Now that we have the holes for the tailgate storage frame drilled out, we're going to go ahead and secure the frame down. And to do that, we're going to use the longer of the countersunk screws, the serrated nuts, the 3/32 Allen wrench, and then I also have some tape, or if you have one of these magnetic fingertip tools, this will help a lot. So I'll show you the little trick that I do with the fingertip tool or the tape when we install these screws. So what you'll notice in the frame is that you have these access holes in order for you to put the screw from the top and then secure it with the serrated nut from the bottom. What you don't want to do is accidentally drop one of those serrated nuts behind the frame, because then the only way you can get it out is with one of these magnetic tools, or if you already bolted some of this down, you'll actually have to undo it so you can get access to that serrated nut that you dropped. So what I have found, the easiest way to deal with this is I just take some of that tape, wrap it around my finger, and then it allows me to stick the serrated nut on my finger like that. That way I can reach in and not worry about dropping it. So I'll show you on this first hole. So I just like to reach in like this, line up the holes, put the longer of the countersunk screws in, and then I'll just get it threaded. And then now I can just go around and secure the rest of the frame by using the serrated nut and the countersunk screws. Now that we have the frame of the tailgate storage secured to the tailgate itself, we're going to go ahead and start assembling the rest of the tailgate storage. The first thing we want to do is determine that we have the correct side plates in the correct orientation. So you can see this one here is inserted incorrectly, and it sticks up above the frame of the tailgate storage. The reason is because, of course, they are shaped on the bottom to the shape of the tailgate itself, so they won't seat all the way down. You'll know you'll have the correct side plate when you can slide them in, and it goes with the contour of the bottom of the tailgate storage, and it sits flush with the frame itself. Once you have the correct sides pieces and you know which side they go to, we can go ahead and start assembling the rest of the tailgate storage. Once we have the side pieces in and we determine which one goes to which side, we want to take a look at the hinges that are included with the kit and make sure we also pair those with the correct side. So when you're looking at these hinges, you'll see that the tailgate storage will open up and away from you. So just like this hinge here, you can see when I pop this up, it goes up and away. So that way, the flat side here, we're going to attach to the side piece so that when we put the top plates on, again, the cover will go up and away. So you want to make sure that you have the correct piece mated to the correct side panel. What we're going to use to attach those is we're going to use the button head screws, and then also the same serrated nuts that we've been using. And this is how the side panel should look once you get the hinge attached to it. Again, we're using the button head screws with the serrated nuts on the back. One thing to keep in mind when you're attaching this is you want to make sure that the hinge piece is flush with the side panel piece. There is a little bit of play, so you want to get these two pieces to be flush. Once you do that, this piece should be able to slide right in. And again, the hinge moves from forward and it goes up and away from you. So let's go ahead and start assembling the other pieces. Now that we have both of the side panels and hinges put together, we're going to go ahead and secure them to the frame. So using the same button head screws from before that we just used on the hinge itself, and the same trick with the tape and the serrated nut, we're going to go ahead, go into this access hole and line up the screw, or line up the nut, and then we're just going to insert the screw and just get it threaded in. So we're going to go ahead and go around and get all 4 of these screws and nuts on these side panels, and we're going to secure it to the frame. The next piece that we're going to put together is the top cover for the tailgate storage. To do that, we'll need the 2 pieces, which one is aluminum and the other is steel. The way that you can tell the difference is not just by weight, but the top piece is actually going to be the one with the larger rectangular holes. So what we're going to need for the install is we're going to use the shorter of the countersunk screws, the same serrated nuts that we've been using, and the same Allen wrench, the 3/32 Allen wrench. With the aluminum bottom piece, we just take the larger and heavier top piece, and all we want to do is just line up the holes. And you can tell which side is up because each one of these holes you can see is made for the countersunk screws. They're beveled. So we're just going to insert each of these screws and just start tightening them down. So we're just going to do that for each one of the holes and get these 2 pieces put together. As you're securing the 2 plates together by inserting the screws and bolting them down with the serrated nuts, make sure to leave the 2 holes on the side, on both sides, open. These holes are going to come into play in the next step. Now that we have those 2 panels together, it helps to have a second person come in and help you and hold the panel so that you can line up the holes with the hinges. So same thing, we're going to use the shorter of the countersunk screws and then also the same serrated nuts. We're going to have someone help us hold, and all we're going to do is line up the panel, put the screw in from the back, and then a nut from the bottom. Get a few threads on there. We'll get the second one in. Okay, I'm going to leave these loose for now because we're going to adjust it. As you can see, there's a slot here, but I'm going to get the other side in as well. And then once we do that, we'll get these fully snugged up. All right, so this is the hinge from the second side on the left here. And we're going to just go ahead and line these holes up as well, and then put a screw through from the back and then nut it from the bottom here. One thing you'll notice is that they may be slightly off, but you can just actually just take the hinge and just flex it enough to where you can get the screw in. All right, once you have that, this side is easy to get it up into the slot. You're going to have your second person help you just lift the weight, and then obviously I can put my hand underneath so that it's slotted all the way up, and then I'm going to snug this down. Okay, and then we'll go back to the other side. Okay, now we're back on the first side here. And again, what you want to do is just grab it, and we left these kind of loose, so you want to make sure to pop it up so it goes all the way up into those slots. And then you just take your Allen wrench and just snug it up from the back. Okay, now I'm just going to go back to the other side, make sure that everything's snug, and then move on to the latches. Now that we've got the top cover attached to the hinges, let's test it before we put the latches on. So one thing when you're testing this, do not grab it from this front edge because you might smash your fingers. So make sure to grab it from the sides like this, and then you can lift it up. And then when you put it down, grab it from the sides, you can put it down. So as you can see, this one hinges up and down, nice and smooth. So we're going to go ahead and put the latches on. All right, let's take a look at these latches. In the package, you'll have 2 of them. Each of them come in separate boxes. And it's composed of the latch itself, a securing bracket, and then also 1 screw. The way that these work is that this screw here will face away from the car, and you'll put it into the slot like so, and then the bracket will go underneath, and you'll secure it with the screw into the body of the bracket itself. So what I like to do is open up the bracket, then we're going to open up the tailgate. I'm going to slide it in. I'm going to take the mounting screw and the mounting bracket. I'm just going to secure that to the top cover. Okay, then we're just going to take a socket there and just go ahead and tighten that up, and do that for both of them. The last step that we need to do is to adjust these latches. So as you can see, this one here, when I push it down, it doesn't fully close. So what we need to do is adjust that little screw that's on the bottom side so that we can fully latch. All right, taking a look at the latch from the bottom side. In our example, we had the latch not able to fully engage, not able to lock it down. So what you want to do is adjust this screw here up or down, depending on your case, so that it latches to the frame. In our case, we couldn't push it all the way down, so what we actually want to do is spin this down so that it creates more space on top of the screw. So first you undo this lock nut and loosen it up. And then I'm just going to spin a couple turns, lock this back up. I'm going to put the tailgate storage back down. I'm going to test it again. There it goes. Now we're fully engaged. I'm just going to lift slightly to make sure that it's locked down firm, and it is. And that's all you need to do to adjust it. Just do that to both sides, and that's the last step. Actually, there's just one more step, and that is don't forget to reinstall the handle for your latch, and then also the little screw underneath. Well, that completes the installation of the Deezy tailgate storage for your Honda Element. Couple suggestions on what you can use it for. I personally like to put tools that I don't need access to all the time, so things like road flares or tire repair kits, I'll stick in there. People that like to cook out of the back of the Honda Element will keep things like their cooking utensils or bowls and cups should fit in there as well. So we're excited to see what kind of uses you come up with. If you have any questions on the install, please hit us up on the website by clicking the Contact Us button and then sending us an email, or you can send us direct message on Facebook or Instagram. That's @Overland Antidote, and we'll see you out there.